The Meeples and Miniatures podcast is sponsored by Two Fat Lardies, Geek Nation Tours, and by the donations of you, the listener. Thank you to everybody for your continued generous support. The Meeples and Miniatures podcast, episode 208. Conan the Boardgame in-depth review, with hosts Neil Shuck, Mike Hobbs, Mike Whitaker, and Dave Luff. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Meeples and Miniatures podcast. My name is Neil Shuck, and on this show I am joined by it's the Phantom Cake Snatcher. It is Mr. Whitaker. How are you, sir?
I'm peachy.
Good. Are you fully recovered from your trips to parts foreign?
Yeah, eventually. The jet lag stopped beating me up somewhere about Bank Holiday Monday when I actually had to lie in.
Cool. Of course, we are also joined by the Luff Meister himself. It is all hail Guru Luff. Hello, sir.
All right, there we go. Just sorting out someone that's strayed from the good ways of being a humble, frugal wargamer there.
Oh, this is part of the. Is this part of the service that you offer?
Well, you know the Hobbs is not. Well, he's not online with us tonight, don't you?
Right. Yeah, I know that. Yeah.
He'll be along later.
Actually, he's not. He's here. He's actually checked into the clinic for a few days to sort of lick himself back into shape. So I've just been beating it out of him, basically. Yeah, it should work, hopefully. We'll try the flail tomorrow if nothing else fails.
I look forward to his report back next week.
Under the hand of Sun Myung Dave.
Yeah. We've locked him into the bunker, actually, right in the corner now. So, yeah, lead-lined and everything. So he's in trouble, really. But, we'll see. He's sweating it out. He's on cold turkey, basically. Yeah.
What's that? Because he hasn't bought anything for 3 days.
Well, yeah, this is it. He's heard there's loads of new Kickstarters out and all sorts, and he's struggling. No mind. Bless him. He'll be all right.
Well, welcome both to this new episode of the Meeples and Miniatures. Yes, it has been a busy week, as you've heard. We actually got 2 shows out this week, or last week, with the Salute interview show and then a Salute debrief. Sorry if you found the last show a little bit negative. We did have some negative feedback about that. What can we say? Unfortunately, sometimes we like to say things as we see them. We like to say things, and obviously we'll express an opinion, which may or may not be in line with,
Okay, what I think Neil is trying to say here is opinions are like parts of the anatomy. Everybody has one. And we sometimes disagree.
Yes.
Sometimes we agree, which is quite surprising. Sometimes we agree and our listeners don't, which is good.
Indeed.
Because controversy fosters discussion. We don't do it deliberately, but if you happen to disagree with us, that's fine. We respect your opinion.
Meeples and Miniatures is based on opinion.
Indeed.
Unless you are a follower of Guru Dave, in which case you do what Guru Dave says.
Well, Hobbsy is anyway at the moment. He's a gibbering wreck. We'll see what he's like. He'll probably be shaky next time you see him.
Ah, right, okay. Yes. So anyway, we have another show for you today, and on this particular show, we will be delving back into reviews, because we haven't done a review for a few weeks, and we want to do reviews more regularly, and it's a board game. shock horror.
Yay!
Yay, indeed. Yay, verily, indeed. Yes, on today's show, we will be reviewing Conan, the board game, as in the game that came out from Monolith. Now, I know we've talked on several occasions about Conan, but we've never actually done a full review of it. And especially now, it's all available to buy, and the new expansions for Conan, which include there are some new. I think there are 2 or 3 new expansions with big expansion boxes, and some of the bits and pieces are coming out this month in the shops.
And me with the bonus coming up.
Yeah, he thought it would be an opportune time to look back and actually review Conan and let us look at it in depth, and so that's what we're going to do. But before then, let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll quickly catch up with what we've been up to.
The eagles have gone. Britain lies defenseless in a cruel world. Since the birth of our Lord, it has been 456 years. What sins have we committed to bring this punishment to Britain? I speak, of course, of the Saxons. They came as allies, but now they seek conquest. The lands of the Britons lie ravaged before them. Blood runs red in our island. We need a leader to stand against them. We need a man to bring together the Britons in common cause. We seek a Dux Britanniarum.
Right, that's enough of that. Dux Britanniarum from 2 Fat Lardies. They really are very good.
What have we been playing? What have we been buying? We might even have painted something. The Meeples and Miniatures crew reveal all. So what have we been up to? Not a lot for me this week, to be honest. I was down with a bit of a cold, so decided not to visit Mr. Luff's this week. So, and besides, not much gaming would have been done as we're attempting to crack on with scenery, building for...
Attempting the word.
Well, yeah, okay, yeah. So I've been doing a bit of feels like spreading icing, you know. Basically working with working with filler, spreading that all over foam core. Didn't get much gaming. I originally planned to do some gaming over the bank holiday weekend, especially since it was tabletop day. We forgot to mention it was tabletop day last week. But also, I mean, it's something that tabletop day happens to fall on my wedding anniversary, which, yeah. So we didn't go there. I did manage to get one piece of gaming in, which actually I played a game of Command & Colours, Ancients, actually online with, Angus Wallace. Angus, you may know Angus. He is the presenter of the World War II podcast, and he also co-presents the WSS podcast and the works on the Ancient Warfare podcast for Caravanserai. And we actually recorded. I think it's going to be due out in a future WSS podcast, talking about gaming online gaming remotely, shall we say, different ways you can game remotely. And one of the ideas was to look at Vassal. So we were looking at Vassal and playing a game of Command and Colours because he never played Command and Colours before, and had a good time. Yeah, good time had by all. Other than that, that's about it for this week. Mr. Luff will be very proud of me in the fact that I haven't ordered anything this week. I've not bought a thing, Dave.
Well, that's good, but I've given up on you, basically. You just, spent years sorting you out, and now you've relapsed.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I've been good this week. So there you go. So that is it. Basically, I'm making scenery, and that's been about it. So that was me.
Luffy?
Me. Carrying on with the Universal Bring Carriers, finishing those off. Done a little bit more tonight before came on, and getting on with the Lardy Day stuff. So I mean, that's sort of about ready to start getting painted now. So yeah, and gaming wise, well, nothing really because just been doing that.
Yeah, it's been a bit head down and go, isn't it, mate?
Well, it has. Yeah, the bunker's an absolute mess at the moment.
Phone call, plastic card, coffee stirrers, and glue everywhere. Yes.
That's my future, I think. I've a whole Italian town to build in 15 mil before somewhere around about Operation Market Garden.
Hang on, that's 5 weeks.
Yeah.
Cardboard, printing, print stick.
Won't be the first time.
No.
Mind you do have the slight advantage of having a 3D printer.
Yes, I'm not quite sure whether I'm going that approach yet. I have to unclog it from its first attempt at printing your DKFZ9s.
Oh, are they causing problems?
Not sure whether this filament is going to do the job. It basically wrapped the first layer around the heads.
Ooh.
Which is a bit interesting. So we'll see how that goes. I have set aside part of this weekend for degunking the heads, and since I'm gonna have to heat the heads up to get the stuff off, and then we'll have another go and see if we can persuade it to actually stick to the base plate this time. I know I can always fall back on the other filament, but the ABS holds slightly better detail, I think. So yeah. I'd like to try it with that first. We shall see. This is all part of the rich learning curve of making stuff with 3D printers.
Indeed. So, anything else, Mr. Luff?
Don't think so.
No? Right, okay, well...
Carry on then.
How about you, Miss Whitaker?
We've done another play test for Partisan. This is the little four-cornered participation Border Reaver skirmish game using open combat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've got a little end of truce day. Let's go and raid the Collingwoods farm for anything we can get. A little skirmish for folks takes about an hour a throw. Seems like the kind of thing that would probably be quite fun at a show.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, I am a published wargaming author once again, for those of you who have the current issue of Wargame Soldiers and Strategy.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I'm the irregular column this month. This bi-month.
Oh, cool. What's that on then?
That's on Herding Cats, otherwise known as Running Wargames Clubs.
Oh, right. Okay, so that's issue number...
whatever it is. I don't know. 90? Is it 90?
I don't know.
I have it downloaded, but I can't remember what number it is. I'm hopeless. That awfully nice Mr. Bauer sent me a complimentary paper copy as well, which is in the other room. I'll go and check for that. Just a second.
Yeah, I would have thought you having an article published. The very least you'd know what piggy number it was.
It's 90. I was right.
It's 90. Good.
It's 90. Yes. You may get a follow up in a couple of issues' time as well, because he seemed to like that one. I had fun. It's illustrated with lots of pictures of cats, which amused me greatly.
Excellent.
Come on, you've been part of a War Games club.
Oh yes. Oh yes.
So yeah, which was nice. It's a small donation to the toys budget in return for writing 1,500 words. What's not to like?
Oh, indeed. Yes.
Indeed. So yeah, that we're Club Full Thrust campaign again this next week, and more Partisan playtesting. Ready for folks to come and see us at Partisan. Look for the usual blue t-shirts and big Peterborough Wargames Club pull-up banner and a nice piece of heather and gorse-covered moorland with a village in the middle of it. And probably some lovely scenery from those folks at War Bases and other people. As always.
Cool, good stuff. Well, that was really short and sweet for us.
by our standards, yeah.
Indeed, incredibly. Right, okay, well, what we'll do then, we'll take a break, and when we come back, we'll be going in-depth with our review of Conan the Board Game. We hope that you're enjoying this episode of the Meeples and Miniatures podcast. If you are, would you like to support us? There's a couple of ways of doing so. You can become a patron of the show by supporting us on our Patreon page. There you can give regularly every time we produce a show. Alternatively, you may want to give a one-off donation, and you can do that by using PayPal. For more details on both these options, please click on the Donate tab on our website www.meeplesandminiatures.co.uk. It's time to go into the rules. It's the Meeples and Miniatures in-depth review. We go deep. Really deep.
No, I mean really, really deep.
So here we are for the feature part of this show. And yes, folks, we're doing another game review. And because we have our fingers on the pulse, and we're up to the minute, we're doing a review of a board game that's been out for, I don't know,
6 months.
6 months? Yeah, was it? When did it get delivered? October last year? September? October? Yeah. October last year. Yes, it is. Yes, we are. We will be talking about Conan. I know we've talked a lot about Conan, but we actually haven't physically gone and actually done a full review of it. And we were thinking about what should we review, and this kind of fits in with. It follows a bit of a theme of what we've been doing recently about board games and various other bits and pieces, and plus the fact we've all played. Correction. We've all
looked at it.
We've all looked at it.
Yeah.
Most of us have played it several times.
Mm.
Somebody's let the side down.
Who's let the side down, Neil?
That will be me then.
Yep, it'd be the person who got it first.
The person that got it first. Surely the person that got it first has played it.
He did, because the person who got it first only got the Barbarian pledge. Therefore, that was actually delivered before the King pledges, wasn't it?
He was.
So he was lording it. He was lording it over us about the fact that he got his pledge.
No, I got the King pledge rather than the King. And oh my God, look at all the shiny! I must buy that pledge.
Yeah, that was mine.
Yeah. Why am I not surprised? It's a board game, though. It doesn't count.
Doesn't count, Dave.
Board game doesn't count.
Board game. Yeah, I almost went there. And in fact, at this point in time, I'm wishing I did. I'm wishing I had. But actually, in hindsight, it was probably a good thing I didn't. But I am wishing that I'd gone the whole hog and ordered some of the expansions as well, because I'm definitely going to get them when they come out, because they're not far away.
Maybe you should put that in your conclusion.
Oh yeah, get ahead of ourselves. I do apologise. Anyway, we're going to be looking at Conan the Board Game. Now, we do have on the podcast something of a Conan aficionado, being a certain wizard of the Welsh variety. So, Mr. Hobbs, would you care to introduce us to the world of Conan?
Specifically me, since all I've ever done is open the box.
Well, you see, now Conan. Yes, Conan was a set of short stories written in the 1930s by Bobby D. Howard.
Wow, was it that old?
Yep,
Didn't
it was.
realise.
Yeah, I think it can be argued that it is the start of the heroic fantasy genre. Some would say. He was friendly with H.P. Lovecraft, so in some of the stories you do get a little bit of Cthulhu dropping in here and there with some of the monsters, but it really was the early sort of prototype of big hulking barbarian goes off on adventures, saves the scantily dressed females, and basically kills anything that comes in his sight. But the thing that I always liked about Conan was that he aged. During the novel, and the novels didn't come out in any sort of chronological order. In one he might be the King Conan who was ruling over his country. In the next he might be the young thief Conan going off to make his money. He might be a mercenary, he might be a warlord. You basically had all these different ages of this character as he grew up from being a barbarian up to his old age. And it was set in a sort of background that Howard put together, and I read them when I was a kid, and I'm reading them again now. And in some ways they've dated, and in other ways they're just fantastic. So when Monolith started showing pictures of the figures that they were going to use for this game, I got very, very interested, and I just wanted the figures. I didn't really care about the game because it was a board game and I didn't play board games in those days. I wanted figures. But then I saw the mechanics and I thought, this sounds good. And so I pretty much bought everything. So that's the background of the Conan universe. The game, obviously with Conan, after the Howard books, it went in and I think Marvel or DC ran, sort of comics using Conan, the Conan character.
Wasn't it Dark Horse?
Obviously, it might be Dark
I
Horse. Yeah,
think it was
one of
Dark
them.
Horse comics, wasn't it? Conan?
Yeah, and they came about in the 50s and 60s, I think, probably into the 70s. We obviously had the films with Arnie. You had Red Sonja, you have all of that sort of stuff going on. But Monolith,
Red Sonja, in which Arnie turns up and is not Conan honest.
Honest,
yeah,
no.
that's the one.
Indeed, and then obviously there was the remake with Jason. Oh, what's his name? Monmouth?
Possibly. Yeah, I haven't seen that.
Notable for the lack of starch snake.
And the 2 TV series.
Really?
What's that?
There is a TV series starring Ralph Muller in 1999-ish, 1997, 1998, and there is tell a lie, there's just one. That's the wrong Conan. Don't just search for Conan, you get Conan O'Brien, which is a delightful image.
Oh, his chat shows are wonderful.
Let's just think about that.
Conan the Barbarian, the king of the chat show.
Yes.
Bit monosyllabic of it.
Yeah.
That's what you get for searching for Conan on IMDb without thinking about it. But yes, there was a TV series in 1997-98, which was mixed, I think is the kindest way of describing it. Some bits of it are quite fun. The hero was suitably buff, as befits the character, and some of the supporting cast were quite fun. And some of the episodes were good, some of the episodes were really, really dire. How do I know this? Because my wife is a fan of any and all trashy sci-fi and fantasy on TV, wherever it comes from.
Yes, I was surprised they didn't have Kevin Sorbo in it.
You and me both. There's also Conan the Adventure of the Animated TV series. There were 2. That was 1992. Oh dear, oh lord. Ooh, that does look dire.
So it's fair to say that over the years, the name of Conan and the genre has been taken in many directions. But for me, It's all about the books and the stories that Howard wrote. So when I found out the Monolith, who were producing this board game, was sticking to the canon, I again got very, very interested. I then got interested when they started discussing that they were working with people who have studied the whole Conan canon and are using those for research, and that they want to make everything as close to the original books as possible. Again, I got interested. So you've got this character, Conan, who basically has many different forms, I think you could say. So I was interested in how they were going to bring that in, how they were going to have Conan the Thief and Conan the Warlord and Conan the King in this game. And they've done it quite nicely. So at this point, should we give a quick overview of the board game itself?
That sounds like a tremendously good idea. Yes.
Okay.
I think we should. So given Muggins here has not actually done more than looked in the box and gone, "Coo," how does it work? What's the general target in terms of number of players? How big a dining table do I need? Are we talking coffee table? Oh my god, I need the table I need for Firefly.
Well, it's a board game. It's for 2 to 5 players. It's playable on a dining room table quite easily. The board is about 2 by 2, and then you need a bit of space around it for various character cards and stuff like that. So it will play quite nicely on a standard sized table, I would say. I played on a 4 by 3 table, and it fits okay.
And it's all in the box?
Everything's in the box.
Even if you only buy the retail version, everything is in the box. If you've got the Kickstarter stuff, you just got lots of extra bits.
Yeah. So the way it works is you have one player who plays the Overlord. So he is basically controlling the scenario. But he's a player on his own. So he is there not just to be a foil to the other players. He's there to win the game. And he has resources at his hand, which will be groups of minions and monsters and things like that. And then you have the players, and they suggest that each player takes one character. So you have a scenario. The scenario will tell you how many characters are in the scenario, and the players then divvy up those characters. And we'll probably come on to this in a bit, but it is possible to play multiple characters if you so wish. But generally they recommend one person plays one hero. You have a map on the board. It might be a map of a Pictish village, or a castle, or a dungeon, or a tavern. And the scenario will take place on that board. The board is split up into distinct areas, which are used to handle things like movement.
But quite interestingly, it's not divided into like squares or hexes, is it?
No. They're sort of logical areas. So the inside of a hut might be one area, outside of the door would be another area, around the corner might be a third. But it's very, very pretty. So it's essentially a game of resource management, I would say, and it's got a couple of very, very clever mechanics in it. The first really good mechanic is the fact that it's not turn-based per se for each character. You don't have the characters each taking a turn and doing a move and fight, and then that's them finished. The game itself is split into turns, and each turn is split into 2 sub-turns, which is the Heroes phase and the Overlords phase. And in the Heroes phase, the heroes do stuff together, and it's up to them to decide who's going to do what and when. So it might be a case of one of the characters moves to go outside of a hut. The second character then maybe move to the other side of the hut, and then the third character might bash down the door, kill everything that's inside of it, and then let the second character move in and try and open the chest.
Ooh, so there's a key difference from Dungeon Saga there straight away, which is that in Dungeon Saga you have to complete your move as one character before you can hand over to another.
Yeah, exactly. It's very, very free form, and it makes players basically talk amongst themselves and decide who's going to do what and when. Because obviously the characters, the heroes, they win or lose together. So it's either, at the end of the game, either the Overlord wins or the heroes win. And each side have got very specific objectives to carry out. And a time limit to do it in, which is a time limit in game turns. So that's the first thing that really attracted it to me. So it does have a little bit of a role play theme to it. Now, this is something, now, as I said earlier, they say that it's best to play one person to one character. And I've done that. And it's quite interesting because when you play just one character, you want to do everything yourself. But you can also play it with one person playing multiple characters. And Dave, you've done this, haven't you? So
yep.
You've done both. So how did you feel that that sort of dynamic worked?
Yeah, it's a completely different game, but I mean it works. It works very well. In some respects, when you're playing all the characters on your own, the game sort of chugs along quite a lot quicker because obviously, if you're playing all the characters, you know what you're planning on doing. Oh, well, you like to think so anyway. So you haven't got to negotiate and talk about the ideas of what all the other players have got. So I think the game is slightly quicker maybe if you're playing all the characters yourself.
Yeah, I found the same. The thing I've noticed when I was playing just with one character is I really wanted that character to live. Whereas when I was playing multiple characters, you sort of think, I could just kill him off.
Yeah, I suppose, that's the other thing. I never actually thought of that, but yeah, I suppose it was right, yeah. Yeah, it plays very differently, and I think it's one of those games also that it depends on who you're playing with. It makes a lot of difference on how good a game you're going to have.
If you play it multiplayer, does it give you character goals?
No, it's all the scenario is set down to the characters have to achieve this to win.
Right. Because I know some of the Dungeon Saga scenarios, I know I'm harking back to Dungeon Saga, but it's the other thing we've looked at in this genre. Some of the scenarios, I think, do assign each of the characters individual little personal goals on top of the main quest goal, don't they?
Yeah. Now, with the scenarios that are out there, and we'll come up to the scenarios later, I haven't seen that, but you can create your own scenarios. And again, I think we'll cover this later on. So that would be something that could be done. I think that would be quite easy to drop in the case of, Conan has to get into the hut and find this instead of the characters have to. So yeah, it's something that could be easily dropped in. That would be done for the scenario design, I would say.
The really classic case of that, which we haven't reviewed, and once I've actually played it, I think we might, is Dead of Winter, where you're zombie apocalypse survivors, but every character has a personal goal on top of the cooperative goal. And you're trying to find a traitor.
Yeah. Well, that could be interesting. Right. Shall we talk about the other aspect of the game, which is the sort of resource management, which I think is quite important?
The way it works, and this actually goes for the players and the Overlord, but the Overlord to a lesser extent. As Mike said, it's a resource management game. Okay, so you have a number of crystals. Okay, each player has a number of crystals, and these are your, for want of a better phrase, think of them in some ways as almost like either resource points or action points or something like that. Okay. And you have 3 areas on your character where they can be. They can be in your reserve area, which means they're available to use. They can be in your fatigue area, which means that you have used them. Or they can be in your wound area, which means, basically, when you take damage, part of your resource starts becoming it's taken away because you're dealing with actually physically being hurt, which is a nice mechanic in itself, because it basically means as you get more damage, you can do less stuff, which is, it's just a nice way that the whole mechanic works. So, at the start of your turn, you have to decide whether you are active or passive. If you are passive, it means that you can recover a lot more from your fatigue into your reserve, but you're very limited on what actions you can perform. I believe the only thing you can do is you can defend yourself, and what's the other thing? I can't remember.
You can re-roll.
That's it. Yes, you can defend yourself, or you can re-roll, and that's the only things you can do. Thank you, Mike. If you are active, you can do everything, but you only recover a small amount of your fatigue into your reserve. To give an example, I think if you're passive, you can generally recover around about 5 crystals, but if you're active, you can only recover 2. Then basically you have several things you can do. You can move, you can attack, you can manipulate something, you can cast spells, should your character be able to do that thing. And then obviously you still got this thing of you can do re-rolls and what have you. Every action you take means that you put a crystal into that part of your character area. Movement, for example, most characters have an amount of free movement which they can spend without having to perform a resource in order to do so. But any movement above that free resource costs extra resource in order to move. And it's one of those use it or lose it sort of things. So it's quite simple and quite straightforward in the fact of if you want to do something, I have to put crystals in. So if you want to move, so if you've used up your free movements and you want to move another couple of areas, it will cost you 1 movement to move each area. It might even cost you more, for example, if you're having to cross terrain or what have you. If you want to attack something, the strength of your attack, bottom line, the number of dice you end up rolling, is based on the weapon you are using, plus the amount of crystals or active action points or what have you put into that particular area to say, I am attacking something. So, for example, if you attacked with a sword, the sword may have, 1 red dice, and you put 3 of your resource tokens into the area, which means you end up rolling 4 dice. Okay, so you can decide how strong your hit is by how many resource points you allocate into that particular area. Same with manipulations. And the reason you would do that is that when you roll dice, you are after a number of successes, which are denoted by icons on the dice. The more successes you get, the better chance you have of doing stuff. And some manipulations require that, okay, you must roll 2 or 3 successes in order to perform something. Depending on the colour dice you have, there are yellow, orange and red dice. The sides of the dice have different numbers of successes on them. And reds are better than oranges and oranges are better than yellows. Okay? So, it's quite straightforward in the fact that you move your resources around to perform actions. And as Mike explained, the turn sequence is very fluid in the fact of characters can perform actions in any order until everybody decides that they have performed all the actions that they wish to perform. The one thing you have to bear in mind, of course, is that from turn to turn, you obviously replenish your actions at different speeds depending on whether you're active or passive. And obviously, in the meantime, the Overlord is going to then be performing his actions, which could then impact what you have to do in the following turn.
So those dice are kind of a bit Fantasy Flight-like in the idea of having different faces with multiple successes on.
Yes, very similar sort of. Yeah, very similar sort of.
So Imperial Assault, X-Wing, etc.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, it is. And it's quite a nice mechanism because the other thing you got is with each of the actions that you have got, you have a maximum that you can put in there. So, for example, if you take like the basic Conan character, he has a melee value of 5, or sorry, a max melee value of 5 with a red dice. So it means that whenever he attacks, you could, in one hit, put 5 gems into that area and roll 5 red dice, plus whatever weapon he's using, because the characters, you have equipment cards which are set up in the scenario. So I might say that Conan's going to start the scenario and he's using a battle axe and he's got leather armor. So you have those little cards next to your character. So you can say that, okay, I'm attacking with my battle axe. My battle axe might give me, I don't know, 2 orange dice. And I'm going to put a single gem in my melee. That gives me the red dice for the melee attack. And I can roll those 3 dice and see how many hits I get. Or if it's a big monster, you might want to say, I'm going to check I'm going to check 5 resources, so 5 gems into that area, and roll essentially 5 red dice plus my 2 orange dice for the weapon. So you need to work out what you're going to do. And you can use rerolls as well. By putting gems into the rerolls, you can reroll a single dice for each gem you put in there.
So you end up in a situation where your resources can be used for multiple things. You can either have one big attack or multiple small ones, as Mike just explained. You may want to end up doing rerolls because you really need an attack to go through. And some equipment does actually give you a free reroll as part of their statistics, for example. But it is resource management. Your resource, what you can physically do in a turn, is limited by the amount of gems that you use, and it's fair to say that you cannot do everything.
No, especially later on in the game when you've burnt all the gems you started off with because you got greedy in the first couple of turns. And that's never happened to me.
Which leads to the question of how do you get gems back then?
You get gems back at the beginning of each turn. You decide whether you're going to go cautious or active.
But you can get over greedy and get yourself in a situation where you're not getting them back fast enough for all the things you need to do, basically. And
that's where teamwork comes in. Because you really want to... The best way to do is to have one character be passive whilst the other 2 characters be active, or the other 3 characters be active. So you need to plan out as a team. Like, next turn...
I'll just hide here behind this pile of barrels and get my breath back while you guys twat the warlord. Kind of thing. Yeah, okay. Sweet.
Now, okay, so that's the way the characters work. The warlord works in a similar sort of fashion. He has something called the Book of Skelos, which is basically his area that he uses for managing all his resources and all the monsters. The Overlord runs a number of monsters. Monsters have more limited statistics, but essentially work in exactly the same way. However, what happens is you have something called the River, which is it's basically each of your monsters is denoted by a tile. You have figures on the board, and the Overlord monsters tend to be in groups, and they're denoted by coloured rings that you can slip on the bases of the models. Really clever idea, actually. So you can put these coloured rings onto models. That denotes then, so you could have a red group, a green group, a blue group, or what have you. There is a corresponding card in this thing called the River of that colour. You might have Pictish warrior, blue Pictish warriors, for example. Now, the River has a number of spaces. I think it's up to about 8 or 9. So I think it's about 8, something like that. Okay.
It is 8.
It is 8, yes, yeah. So the River has 8 spaces, okay, where these cards fit. And they are numbered from left to right, 1 to 8. Okay. The number denotes how many gems it takes to activate that unit. And what happens is you activate the unit, you pick the card up, you put it at the end of the river, and everything else slides down. So it basically means you can, when you activate a unit, it goes to the high end, so it's 7 or 8, gems or what have you. So you can activate a unit for, say, 2 gems. If you really wanted to, you could then activate that same unit again, but it would cost you whatever it was on the end of that, on the end of the river, and it would usually end up in slots 7 or 8. So you can potentially activate a unit twice, but it becomes very expensive. Usually what you'd end up doing is, now an Overlord can activate 2 units in his turn. So he can use gems to activate 2 of his unit cards, and each of those unit cards performs an action. It's basically move and attack. You can, in the same way that heroes allocate extra dice to moving, or to making defense rolls, or perhaps to doing rerolls, the Overlord can do exactly the same thing. And again, the Overlord is limited in the number of resources he has, depending on the difficulty of the scenario. But what happens with him is that he automatically gains back a number of resources every turn. And that, again, is dependent on the difficulty of the scenario. Basically, you increase the difficulty of the scenario by how many resources you give the Overlord. That could potentially mean that, obviously, the Overlord can do more things, can potentially activate a unit twice, especially if he's activating a particularly powerful monster. That can really hurt. So the Overlord works in a very similar fashion, but is slightly more restricted.
You also have the thing that with some of the bigger monsters, they may have 2 tiles in the river, which means you can activate them potentially twice, and not a huge amount.
Yes. So it is slightly different to playing a character, but no less challenging. It's a slightly different experience.
And the other thing that, again, which is quite interesting is, say you have a unit of, say, 5 Pictish warriors. Let's go for the 5 blue Pictish warriors.
Mm-hmm.
Say they all get killed, which can happen quite quickly. The card in the river just gets turned over, so it's got like a big red smear on it. But the card stays where it is in the river, which means that you're then trying to activate units at a higher level, and then these cards basically sit there at the bottom. So the only way you can get rid of them, you can either do a thing called dredge the river, where you can actually remove the card completely from the river, but that costs you fatigue. Sorry, that costs you gems, and those gems are lost permanently. Or you can activate it and move it to the end, which costs you one of your activations. But you do also have event cards in the river as well, and some of these event cards can allow you to bring back reinforcements. And those reinforcements can be the ones that you've just lost. So those 5 blue Pictish warriors that you've had killed, if you use the event card, you might be able to bring some of those back, which means you then flip over the card, put the figures into a deployment area on the board, and they can then be activated.
Yes. Oh, look, another group's just turned up.
Exactly.
Yes. So that's the way activation works. Very, very clever. And it's very simple actually. Once you've done it, played a couple of turns. Mr. Would you agree? It becomes quite intuitive.
Yeah, without a doubt, Neil. It's definitely very intuitive. Once you've played a couple of rounds, you're well in the swing of it, and quite often, even if you don't quite know a rule, you've sort of like managed to work out which way that rule's going to go before you've even read the rule book, if that makes sense.
So, Mr. Hobbs, you want to explain how combat works?
Yes. Okay, so combat is nice and simple. We've mentioned these dice. So, generally, combat is done 1 figure versus 1 figure. So, let's say I've got the Conan figure because I've got the game, right? So, I decide to do something rash, and I move Conan into an area which has got 2 or 3 Pictish warriors in there. I can then attack. So I do my pre-move. It says beginning of the turn. So I can move into that area and then go, right, I'm going to attack these. Generally, what you do is you attack one figure at a time. So most of the sort of minion class overlord figures will have an armor value and 1 hit point to kill them. And what you need to do is to kill one of the minions is you need to roll a certain number of attack dice. And the figure you're looking for is you need to get over their armor value and their hit point. So say the Pictish Warriors have got an armor level of 2 and 1 hit point. You know that to kill one of those, you need to score 3 hits. Now, a red dice may have 2 areas with 3 hits on them. It may have 2 areas with 2 hits on there. It may have 1 area with 1 hit on there. So you get your red dice. You also get a dice for whichever weapon you use. So you generally roll in 2 dice, and that's with 1 gem. So you spend a gem, you roll your dice, and you're looking for 3 hits. Off you go. You roll them. If you score 3 hits, minion's dead. He's gone. Some of the bigger monsters have an armor level, and they have multiple hits. So you might have, say, a giant snake that has maybe 8 hits. So to kill that monster in 1 hit, you need to basically do 11 points of damage. And that's where it comes into the whole thing. Do I just roll, do I put all of my gems into one massive Conan-esque strike with my battle axe at the big snake and hope to do enough to kill him? And if I don't kill him, he's still going to be there, but he's going to have a lot less hits. So that's the decision that you need to make. You also then can have abilities. So certain abilities, which again tie to characters and are tied to scenarios and to various weapons. So you might have an ability that allows you to do a cleave. So instead of attacking 1 minion at a time, you can essentially roll a number of dice, and however number of hits you get go against all of the enemy units in that area.
Yeah.
So
imagine it as Conan wields his battle axe like a dervish and slays all around him in a single swing sort of thing. Yeah.
But that doesn't happen all the time. You don't automatically get that. Normally you attack 1 monster or 1 minion at a time. So, if Conan's just got a sword, he basically would have to say, right, I'm going to attack minion 1. Spend a gem. Roll the red dice, roll an orange dice. Do I do 3 hits? Yes, he's dead. Right, I'm going to attack the next one. Spend another gem. And rinse and repeat until either you run out of gems or you run out of minions to kill. Or if you've got this cleave ability, you can say, I'm going to just spend 3 gems, roll 3 red dice plus a yellow dice. If I do 9 hits, I kill them all. It's up to you how you do it. So it's just another resource to use.
However, if you're the Overlord player,
it's subtly different.
Because the other thing is, obviously, these are your minions that your heroes are trying to cleave through. And,
yes.
you love them and nurture them, and therefore you want to defend them. Now, sometimes you kind of go, well,
they're expendable.
Conan's done so much damage, there's no way I can come back from it. But there are other times, and especially when it is particularly important that the particular minion dies, you might want to go, hang on a second, I want to reinforce the saving throw of that minion. So you can spend resource points, you can spend gems, resource points, to have additional armor rolls, and maybe even a reroll. So you can start spending your resources in defense to attempt to save damage. Now, effectively, again, it's basic arithmetic. At the end of the day, the hero is attempting to get X number of hits more to go over the number of hit points that a minion has. But if you as the Overlord are then rolling extra dice, you're potentially putting extra armor, or sorry, it's not armor, it's dodge, isn't it? It's dodge. So basically, what you're allowing is that your minion is dodging out of the way, or desperately trying to avoid the attacks of the hero. So you're spending some of your resource in defense, attempting to dodge the attacks of the incoming hero, and therefore keep your minion alive. Sometimes you don't want to do that. Sometimes it's actually pretty vital that you do.
Yeah, exactly. And again, that's done by rolling the dice, and the number you roll on the dice get reduced from the number of hits that the hero's just made. And it's a similar concept when it's the other way around. So when you have the Overlord characters attacking the hero, they obviously have attack dice that they roll. So they would roll a certain number of attack dice. Now, the heroes don't generally have an armor value in the same way that the Overlord minions do. They would have some equipment which will give them some protection, maybe like armor or a shield. But they also have this thing called guard or dodge, which allows them to roll a dice. So, again, let's say Conan has now been attacked by the giant snake, and the giant snake rolls, 3 red dice worth of damage. And he rolls, say, it's 6. Now, Conan obviously needs to save some of that, so there's 6 hits going through. So say he's wearing leather armor, and he's got a shield, so maybe the leather armor gives him a save of a yellow dice, and the shield gives him a save of an orange dice. You can roll those 2 dice, and say you roll 3. That means you've only had 3 hits going through. But you've also got this thing called guard, which so that the use of equipment is passive, so you don't have to spend gems. But you can then use guard by spending some of your gems to do a guard roll, which then gives you an extra dice or 2 to roll against those hits. So once you've worked out how many hits have gone through, you then move gems from the fatigue area of the character sheet, or if there's none in the fatigue area, you move them from the reserve area, but they go into the wound area. And as soon as that character runs out of gems, he's dead.
And it is, for want of a better phrase, as simple as that. Very straightforward.
Yeah. Range combat is done the same. You have like a range combat value, which gives you a dice. You can chuck swords and battle axes around the table as you wish. Or the table, around the board, I meant, as you wish. Each of these areas on the board has a dot in the middle of them. And so to measure if you've got line of sight, you just basically decide where you want to chuck the, maybe you've got a throwing axe. You say, right, I'm going to chuck my throwing axe from the area I'm in into 2 areas down the road. You basically check the line of sight from the center dot to the center dot. If you can see it and it doesn't go through any intervening terrain, it's line of sight, and off you go. You just chuck it. Obviously, figures that are in the way reduce the number of hits that you roll. So you basically just roll the number of hits, and then if there's figures in the way, that knocks down the number of hits that you carried out. But it's a similar concept. It's all using this basically. Rolling the number of dice, see how many hits you get. That's the target. And off you go.
And basically, the turns progress. You have a hero turn, Overlord turn, until you complete your scenarios, or the heroes fail because the turn of it runs out, or the heroes are dead.
They've done something very clever and very subtle with the turn sequence. So the turn itself, as I say, it's split into 2 phases. You have the hero's phase. So the heroes do what they want in that phase. And when they've decided they've had enough, it then moves on to the Overlord phase. It's during the Overlord phase that the turn counter gets moved forward. And the game finishes once you've finished the last turn. So i.e., if the turn is if the game is 8 turns long, the game carries on until you move the turn counter from the 8th turn into the 9th, which means that the heroes always get one final roll of the dice to finish the game, and it's beautifully thematic.
Yes.
Sounds it.
Yes. So, yeah. So, for example, as it generally works out, it's that usually it's the heroes. Because moving the turn marker is the first thing that the Overlord does, isn't it?
Yeah.
So usually what happens is that if the heroes get the first turn, okay, what it basically means is that the heroes essentially have one turn more than the Overlord in order to complete whatever their scenario objective. So potentially, as Mike said, you have this wonderfully thematic last gasp effort to desperately try and complete the scenario.
Yeah, and it's great. I mean, they got lots of little rules in there. So each character has a character card, which has, it has their reserve, fatigue, and wound markers in there. It has their areas for fighting, movement, range combat, manipulation, with all the dice in there. It's got all the information on this one little card, which is about the size of A5, if that.
Yeah.
So everything happens on there. The Overlord's got a nice big sort of plastic book of Skelos thing, which is about a foot long by about 8 inches deep, which has got all of his information on there. And then you've got the board in the middle. Well, it just seems to work. You've got rules in there for having chests. So you need to pick the lock to get into the chest. And then when you open the chest, you basically take an equipment card at random from a deck, and that's what's in there. Heroes can swap equipment around as long as they're in the same area. So, if your thief finds a big chainmail armor, he might want to give that to the tank, who might just have leather armor. So you can throw things around, like you say. You can throw your battle axe across the table, but if you throw your battle axe across the table, you then have to go and get it, because you basically take the item card and put it in the square where you've just thrown it. And if that's your only weapon, well, you then have to move your character into there to go and pick it up again. But sometimes you have to do it because it's the last turn of the game and you need to kill off that villain.
Indeed. Yes, and one thing we were missing is, and again, similar sort of like, this is where kind of like the RPG sort of thing starts to come in. You have encumbrance. So, items that have weight. Okay. Why is that important? Each of your characters has a certain number of special abilities. Okay. Depending on what type of character they are, whether they're magicians or whether they're thieves or what have you. So they all have special abilities. However, some of these abilities are dependent upon how much weight you're carrying. So, for example, if you're weighed down with a battle axe, metal armour, and a shield, you'll probably find it very difficult to swim. So what tends to happen is that your abilities have an encumbrance value over which you can no longer use them. The other twist on that is that some of
that's neat. I like that.
Yeah. So as I say, depending on what you're carrying, sometimes you might go, "Oh, I really like that piece of armor. However, if I then put it on, I then cannot perform this ability," which actually will come in really, really useful. So perhaps I'm better off not taking the armor in the first place.
Does that lead to moves like throw the axe, use the ability, go get the axe?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean,
cute.
And the other cute thing is like for example, in the first scenario, you have to rescue a princess and chop off the head of the
Zogar Sag.
Zogar Sag, that's the guy. And take the head to the father of the princess to prove that you've killed him. Okay. Both the princess's body and the head have encumbrance. So, depending on how much you're carrying, can potentially start slowing you down and how far you can move. We had an interesting situation in a particular game that Dave played, didn't we?
Yep.
Where we ended up with, I think, what can only be termed as a team juggling competition.
Yeah, we've done that as well.
So Dave just doesn't even go, yep, and then doesn't say anything. It's like, oh, for goodness. Yeah, I mean, how much of a cue do you need? But there we go.
Tell us about it, Dave. Tell us about juggling the head.
Boy, it was such a long time.
Oh,
ago
okay.
now.
Well, okay. Yeah, okay. So I'll forget it. All right, so basically, you end up in a situation where, right, okay, we need to get off the board with the body of the princess and the head of Zogar Sag, but at the same time, the people who are in the room have to then juggle equipment between themselves in order to make sure that everybody can carry the body and the head and get off the board and exit the village in time to complete the scenario. So you end up with a situation where someone runs into the hut, throws a head at the player who's just found the princess. Say, here, you carry that. I'll pick up the body of the princess, and then everybody exits the board because everybody's not encumbered. It's very clever and very well done, but it does make up for some quite comic moments.
Yeah, we had a similar one where it was almost like playing rugby. Because it was like the last turn, and in the end, I think one of the characters threw the head about 3 spaces to Hadratus, which is the wizard who was quite close to the end, quite close to the exit of the village. So we basically threw the head at him. He picked it up and then basically ran off with his last remaining gem.
There is no truth in the rumor that the wizard's name was Gareth Edwards. Then.
Yeah. But
were you fighting barbarians?
There were, yes. But the game makes you do things like that. You know, like we've had a game where Conan was attacking, was in an area right in the middle of the village with something like 4 or 5 picks on him, getting mullered, and Hadratus, the wizard, who picked up this explosive orb, chucked the orb in the same square. Now the orb does damage to everybody in that square, so it killed the picks, but it also meant that Conan took a couple of points of damage. But it's just like, well. But you do things like that. You do wonderfully cinematic things like that, and the game allows you to do it. I wasn't happy having a fireball thrown at me, I must admit.
So that's basically the way the game works.
Scenarios. I'm assuming you don't just sort of randomly dump things on the table and go for it. So what you got?
Right, so in the base game, and let's just look at the base game because that's what's in retail. You get 4 boards in the base game. It's actually 2 boards, but they're double-sided. And there's 8 scenarios in there. Now, if you do the Kickstarter, then you get another 1 double-sided board plus another 4 scenarios. Monolith have also released 8 more scenarios online, and they've turned around and said that they're going to be releasing a lot more scenarios to cover all of the new figures that they released during the Kickstarter, which are going to be coming out for retail, and they've started doing that, so that's where you get the 8. There's also some fan-made scenarios. There's an unofficial site called ConanScenarios.com, which has loads of scenarios in there, and it's also got a scenario creator, which allows you to basically design your own scenario, which looks like great fun. I'm going to have a look at that.
I must admit, I wasn't aware of that site until you mentioned it when you were performing, doing the review notes. I hadn't heard about that at all. So that was a great discovery. Well done, mate.
It's great, but each scenario basically tells you what board you're playing the game on, what the objectives are, a bit of backstory, and crucially, it says you will use these heroes with this equipment, and the Overlord gets his similar thing. He has his units, and the scenario is set up so the heroes all start at sort of an entry point, but the Overlord's minions and monsters are all set up on the table when you start. So everything is there ready for when you start. So even though there's only 8 scenarios in the book, in the box set, there's an awful lot of replayability because you can, just by changing the character you use, changes the way the game plays. Or changing who's going to be the Overlord changes the way the game plays. So you can play the same scenario an awful lot of times and get a completely different game each time. No, I think we played the opening scenario 3 or 4 times, and it's always been different. I imagine you guys have had the same.
Yeah, Dave?
Yeah, very much so, haven't we? Really?
Can you be a bit more effusive, a bit less monosyllabic, a bit less Conan-like?
Sorry, honestly.
Tell us about it, Dave. Tell us all about it. What do you feel? What's your feelings, Dave?
What's my feelings about Conan? I think it's a damn good game, really. It's got a lot of options in it. You're always got choices to make, which is always a good thing, isn't it? Really, sort of game that Neil hates because he wants to do everything and then realizes he can't.
Well, you can for the first couple of turns, but then you seriously run out of energy.
No, Neil normally runs out of energy after the first turn because he's done everything in the first turn.
Yeah, and then basically you frantically spend the rest of the game playing catch-up.
Like I said, it's teamwork, isn't it?
Yeah.
You need to work out a plan.
And actually, even the first scenario, what you actually have to do, your objectives and the time limit you have to do it in, is very tight indeed. So you really do have to work out a plan of what you're going to do in order to try and get everything done in the amount of time that you've got. So yes, teamwork, it is very much teamwork to the force. Some scenarios are slightly easier because you have more time. But yes, some and that is again is one of the ways that you manage how difficult a scenario is. What's your objective? How long does it take? How long have you got to do it in?
Closely followed by what's that great big snake doing there?
Yes, and where on earth is the princess?
How much replay value is there in the scenarios then?
Massive. Didn't I play the first scenario 3 times?
Do the objectives move or?
Yeah, they do. It's all random. But every game's very, very different. I played the first scenario, which is the base training scenario 3 times, and I didn't get bored.
Yeah, it's very clever. I mean, even though the set of the scenario tells you where all of the minions are started. So let's look at the first scenario, which is the classic, let's go and rescue the princess and chop off the head of the nasty chieftain. You know where the chieftain's going to be because he's always going to start in the same place. But there's 6 huts in that village, and the princess is in one of them. And the Overlord knows where it is because he's put the little counter for the princess underneath a marker with a number hidden. And whenever you go into a hut, he then looks at his marker and goes, no, she's not in there. So you then have to go to another hut. And he goes, no, she's not in there. And eventually you'll find her. But then you've got to get her off the table.
Yes. In the meantime, obviously, again, you've got, and the heroes have 2 objectives. They have to find the princess and kill this chieftain. And so if you've got a clever Overlord, and especially if, the random placement of the princess has been kind to you, you end up where the party has to go in 2 different directions to do 2 different things with a very limited time in which to do it. Heaven forbid you end up in a situation where the princess happens to be in the middle of the village in the hut with the giant snake. Oh dear, what a shame.
Where did that giant snake come from?
Indeed. A bloody big basket, I would suggest.
Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, it's very clever. The scenarios are nicely put together, and there is a lot of replayability in them.
Cool. Campaign?
No. Now, with the Kickstarter, they are releasing a campaign book.
Right.
And there are expansions coming out which have linked scenarios in there in a particular area.
Gotcha. And the obvious then follow-up is solo play.
No. And I don't know how you could do it, because the Overlord is a player. The person playing the Overlord wants to win the game. So it's really difficult to do as a solo game. In fact, I don't think it could be done.
Okay, so we've now reviewed this. We've reviewed Dungeon Saga. Compare. You've played both. I haven't yet. How do they differ? I mean, given that Dungeon Saga does afford you solo play and provide you with campaign stuff, how do they differ? Which do you prefer?
I'm going to cop out.
You're not the person to ask here because you're a raving Conan fanboy, so...
Well, no, I was going to say I can't compare them because they are very different games, even though they're both... Dungeon Saga is a really nice dungeon bash, but you're always in a dungeon. Conan is a lot more freewheel, but I do like Dungeon Saga. I think Dungeon Saga is possibly a better campaign-style dungeon game to Conan, but I think Conan is a more rounded fantasy game. I think you've got to look at them as two different things. They're not. It's not an either-or, I think.
Dave, does Conan scratch your Dungeon Bash itch, or is it something different?
Yeah, it's something different, but it does sort of scratch the itch, but it's definitely something different.
Still got to come down here, then, haven't you?
yeah, we have.
What's the Tigers' schedule looking like, Dave?
Getting towards the end of the season now. 2 more home games. I think it's just a very good game in its own right, if that sort of makes any sense. It's not the full-on Dungeon Bash sort of thing, but yeah, I just think it's got some very clever mechanics in it, to be honest. And it's just got lots and lots of options, which I just love. Yeah.
Yeah, it is interesting, this whole resource management issue, but also the interactive turn between the heroes. The fact that it isn't turn-based, so one hero has to perform all their actions before the next hero does. That's a huge game changer when compared to your average Dungeon Bash game, where yes, the thief has to act before the fighter, which has to act before the cleric. Oh, sorry, we haven't got a cleric. Which has to act before the wizard, etc. Yeah, because you've got this interaction between the characters, it makes a huge difference to the way you play, and especially when you have each of those characters controlled by a different person. From an observer's point of view, as an Overlord, it's a very different experience watching 3 people attempting to do the same thing that you've seen that one person attempt to do the week before.
Yeah, but they are 2 different games. I mean, again, similar with Dungeon Saga, where you got a base character, but that can then be enhanced and just tweaked by giving different equipment. It changes the game. And the other thing I like about it is, I think there's 8 different Conans in all, if you use the Kickstarter ones. So you get your basic Conan that's in the retail box, but they got these artist boxes, so they got some of the classic sort of Conan artists to do illustrations, and then they've then made figures for those illustrations, which have got slightly different statistics. So, Conan the Warlord has a different setup to Conan the Thief. And that, I think, is lovely. It's really clever.
And of course, the one thing in all this we haven't talked about yet at all, the miniatures. Conan,
yes.
And especially...
Well, actually we have. We reviewed them when the Kickstarter arrived. We would be remiss to do a full review of the game without mentioning them. Now, if you've got the Kickstarter set, you'll have a metric shed load of figures, a couple of hundred. But even the base game comes with 70 odd.
74, yes.
Yeah. Generally pretty decent quality.
Yeah, there is some softness on some of the figures. Some of the faces of the females is a little soft. There's been a lot of talk about the figures, about them being flat. But they made a huge mistake in having the hero figures cast in a very, very light plastic, which means you hide the detail. And I painted about 30 of the figures, and there is a lot of detail on them. Now they are single piece, well, mostly single piece plastics, so they have had to do some work on the undercuts, as you would expect. But I think they're great. They're very, very nice figures. Some of them, like I say, some of the faces are a little bit meh. A couple of them I've been quite disappointed with, but on the whole, I'm very, very happy with the figures.
And there are some that are absolutely awesome. We mentioned the giant snake, for example, which is in the main base game, and that is absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, they are, and there's some real gems in there. Beautiful figures.
Yeah.
Hello, the henna, what's her name? The one that's not Red Sonja.
Yeah.
That figure isn't very good.
No.
No, that it really hasn't got a face.
Hasn't got a face, hasn't got a lot of hair.
No.
I think there was a lot of people saying the lion wasn't particularly good. The saber-toothed tiger needs a little bit to be desired. So there are the odd figure that you kind of go, yeah, that could have been better. But the vast majority of figures are pretty decent.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah. So,
and they take paint really well.
Well, that's good. That's good to hear. So there is the base game that is out. There are already a number of miniature expansions available to buy, such as the Crossbowmen. There are the Witch Hunters.
Yep, the Kushite Witch Hunters. Yoggoth is out, which is the big monster. I'm not an alien, honest, but I'm an alien. I might be Cthulhu.
Yes, from actually the first story that they ever wrote, second story.
Second, I think that was. Yeah. I think the first one is when he was a king.
Yes, I think it was this. It's chronologically, it's about the first story, but certainly in order of stories written, it's probably the second or third story. Has this great hulking, not alien thing, which doesn't look unlike Cthulhu-ish, but can be used as a hero figure. And they've actually created a couple of scenarios for him.
Yeah.
So box sets are currently there are some figure box sets currently available. They are imminently about to release Wave 2 of the Kickstarter, which should soon after then mean that the scenario box sets that Mike mentioned will then come to retail after they've been released to the Kickstarter crowd. There are some...
Also, for those of you who are on the Kickstarter, if you want a reprint of the rulebook that's actually got legible rules in it, there is a pledge manager just popped up.
Okay, can I just... There was a lot said about the quality of the rulebook. I didn't think it was that bad.
Obviously some people did.
Some people claim the game was unplayable, which it certainly wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't best, but at the same time, they have now produced new free PDF download versions of the rulebooks. Once they've printed the rulebooks for all the Kickstarter backers who want them, apparently they are then sending a job lot to Asmodee to send out to everybody who bought it at retail, and then the new rulebooks are going to go into any further games that they produce.
One small deduction one can make from this is that they haven't screwed up their finances.
No, they're still going. Which is good.
Yeah, which is good. Yes.
Given that that's not a cheap exercise.
No.
They obviously got their budgeting right.
Yeah. And to be fair, they did. They quickly responded to the criticism. Okay, it's taken them a while to get it sorted, and they probably haven't moved as quickly as some people would have hoped. in the same way as the scenario creations. I mean, there were some people who were very quick to turn around and complain, hang on a second, I have 100 figures here which is completely unusable in the game. This is a load of rubbish. They are now putting out new scenarios with those miniatures in. They have promised that they will be producing a scenario generator at some point, but obviously they're working through Wave 2 stuff. So resources probably going elsewhere at the moment, but we have seen stuff coming out from them. Maybe not as quickly as people would like, but we have seen them producing stuff. I know after the Kickstarter landed, there were people who were not happy, and I think the game after it landed got a bit of a bad reputation because of the amount of people who complained about the rulebook. I think it possibly got a bigger slating than what it deserved.
Yeah, I agree. The rulebook was usable. I was infuriated because I had a load of counters where I had no idea what they meant.
Yeah.
Because they didn't explain them. The new rulebook, which are much better. It really does explain exactly what every part of the, every counter is explained what it is and why it's used. So, massive improvements. It would have been great to have that at the beginning, but I played using the old book quite a few times and it was okay. There have been typos. Some of the equipment cards have been incorrectly started, and again, they're going to be releasing those which will be coming out in Wave 2 to everyone who's bought them. So there's things like that. I mean, they have made mistakes. They put their hand up and they are trying to address them. They're obviously not being able to address them as quickly as people would like. There's another thing that we didn't mention, which is there is an alternative way of playing the game as well, where you can switch the sides, where you can have the Overlord running a group of heroes, and you can have the other players each playing one of the nasties, one of the evil type people. So you can swap the scenarios around, and they've actually released one of the scenarios which does that. So you can have, the Overlord running, say, 3 or 4 heroes plus a bunch of sort of bodyguard units, and the other players are playing Zogar Sag or one of the Skephos, one of the necromancers, or one of the evil swordsmen that are around. So you can swap around that way as well, which is quite a nice way of playing it.
Yes, they do. Yes, you do have character sheets for all the characters, be they heroes or villains. So, yeah, that option is there. It's, a clever way of doing it. There are a lot of options in the game which do not currently appear to have official rules for them, for want of a better phrase. So, it is there for you to use, but at the moment there aren't kind of official guidelines. So it's a little bit suck it and see. For example, this whole thing about swapping heroes around. Some heroes are better than others, and there are currently no notes about things like balancing scenarios using different heroes, for example, or different equipment. So they were saying that, for example, depending on the equipment you use, some scenarios are easier if you've got different equipment. So, for example, in a particular scenario, if you've got the battle axe, if Conan's got the battle axe, which can do cleave, I hit multiple opponents in a single turn, that makes it a darn sight easier than if he's only got a sword. If you've only got a few opponents on the board, as an example, and that's kind of a scenario balancing issue. And whilst, some people will complain about the suck it and see nature of doing that sort of things. At the same time, others will kind of, not see that as an issue. But you certainly had reactions both ways around.
Oh, you did, yeah.
I think on that note, does anybody have anything to add as a kind of a final summary about the game? Do I take it that everybody who's played it likes it?
Yes.
Probably one of the best games I've played this year.
Yeah,
High praise.
I am so pleased I bought it. I am disappointed that I didn't have faith in the game enough to purchase the expansion sets on the Kickstarter, because it looks like the 3 scenario boxes that are coming will be must buys, because it is a great game. Does what it says on the tin and then some. It does something that we haven't seen before, or at least not in the particular in the particular package that it came in. So it's a bit different, which is good.
Yeah, I'll agree with that.
So highly
Better
recommend.
dig one out and play it then.
Yeah, highly recommended. Highly recommended. It is a really fun game. Different experience depending whether you're playing with 2 or whether you're playing with multiple people. But yeah, loads and loads of fun. And if you want a lot of miniatures to paint,
Go and buy it.
I was going to say, the interesting thing with the miniatures is I could probably farm those off on Anne, because I know she likes painting single figures, but she ever does units.
there's a lot of them. As Mr. Hobbs will attest.
I've done 28.
And your hardest is like you scratch the surface. Is that
I'm a 10th of the way in.
10th of the way? Yes, indeed. Yeah. So there's expansions coming out in the next few months. There has been talk about some crossovers on boards, if nothing else, with Mythic Battles. But we'll wait and see what that brings when Mythic Battles comes out. Maybe even more replayability there with some new boards. We'll have to wait and see.
And Modiphius as well. Modiphius did a pledge in their Conan RPG.
Indeed, yes, they did a Conan Boardgame pledge for it was floor tiles, and there was a scenario background book.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you could give you extra background to help you create your own scenarios. And that should be coming out in the not too distant future. I know it's a bit late from the original Kickstarter plan, but that is coming. That is due. But yeah, it's a great game. Go out and buy it. Really good game. This is a message from The Cranky Lawyer. Huzzah! Please plan to join us for 3 great days of the best our hobby has to offer. Beautiful tabletops, challenging scenarios, board games, a wonderful variety of gaming-related shopping, and great company. Huzzah! May 19th to the 21st, 2017, South Portland, Maine. Miniatures games, board games, tournaments, vendors, raffle and great company. Join us for 3 days of fun. If you want to learn more about shoutouts, visit our Patreon page. The link is on the website. We always love to hear from you, our listeners. You can contact us in a couple of ways. You can do that via email at mailbag@meeplesandminiatures.co.uk, or you can now leave a voicemail message for us. The number to call is 0116 318 4114. Please don't, call charges may apply. So there you go. I mean, I'm sure you're not at all shocked by our opinion of the Conan Boardgame, because, and after all, it was one of our top games of last year. So I don't think much of what we've said came as any shock to anybody. No?
I do hope not. Unless we have some new listeners, in which case, welcome, enjoy, and go and lose yourself in the back catalogue.
It will be interesting to see. I mean, now that we've got things like, we have more kind of similar stylish. I mean, I know we asked a question during the review. It's like, how does Conan stand up against some of the other Dungeon Bash games? Whether it be sort of like Dungeon Saga or how does it hold up against the D&D game we played. And even I'm thinking now we've got Dark Souls turned up. Dark Souls turned up from my good friend Mr. Hickman, part of our gaming group, now has a nice copy of Dark Souls, and oh my word, there. Before we finish, I do have to say I have to congratulate Steamforged on what they've done with Dark Souls in the fact of when they finished doing their Kickstarter, and they got, however, was it 3.5 million with loads of thousands of backers, and everybody said you'll never deliver on time, and they said, oh yeah, we will, and they said, oh no, you won't, and they did. They've delivered on time, and the minis in the game look absolutely fantastic. I don't know if either of you guys have seen them in the flesh at all.
I have not. No.
Dave, you're likely to see them in a couple of weeks, but they have done a seriously good job with them. Really nice. I mean, I know people will say, well, okay, they're not getting all the Wave 2 stuff for 6 months, but yeah, they did it. But the base game, they delivered on time. It said April 2017. They delivered it in April 2017 for I think the majority of backers, which I think they've done a bang up job. So hats off to them. And yeah, but it's interesting comparing something like Conan to, as I say, with Dungeon Saga, potentially things like Dark Souls. Yeah, there's a lot of kind of Dungeon Bashies type games, but they all kind of do something a bit different, don't they? I think, as Dave was saying in the interview, Conan, does kind of scratch a little bit of a different itch. Anyway, that kind of wraps up our review show of Conan. Thank you, Mr. Whitaker and Mr. Luff, for partaking in that particular review, as well as Mr. Hobbs, who is not with us on this particular recording, but thank you for his participation during the review of Conan.
Thank you. Keep him locked in there.
Sorry, I forgot where he was. On that note, I think we shall. I think we shall call this podcast done, and we'll get out of here. So, thank you for joining me, Mr. Whitaker. Thank you, sir.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, the legend that is Guru Luff.
Yep. Cheers, guys.
All hail him. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And
down, Hobbsy, down.
And lastly, thank you to everybody for listening. I hope you've enjoyed the show. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Happy gaming.
Roll good dice.
And we'll speak to you next week. Thank you for listening to the Meeples and Miniatures podcast. If you've enjoyed the show, why not share it with others by leaving us a review on iTunes? And if you have any comments or questions, you can always email the show. The address is info@meeplesandminiatures.co.uk. And you can also visit our webpage, where you'll find a complete episode archive, all the View from the Veranda podcasts, rules reviews, and our blog of hobby items and news, which is updated several times a week. This is also where you'll find the links to our presence on social media, and here you can follow us on Twitter or join our Facebook group. And finally, here you can also find details should you wish to support us by making a donation to the podcast. All this on the Meeples and Miniatures website, www.meeplesandminiatures.co.uk. The Meeples and Miniatures podcast is licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 3.0 Unported license. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.